Howdy folks, it's Adriel, the Hunting Gear Guy. And I wanted to show you guys this Kel-Tec KSG. This is a pump action 12 gauge shotgun. It's actually got two tubes towards the front here, and it's bullpup, which means that a lot of the action is happening back here. So because it's bullpup with these two tubes, it'll actually fit 14 rounds of 2 3/4 shells. So it's quite a high capacity shotgun, and because it's pump, it's pretty fun. So before we get too far in, let's make sure that this guy's empty, and that's kind of a weird way of doing this, but you actually have to look in from the bottom. I can see that my chamber is empty and my two magazine tubes are empty. So let's take a closer look at this thing. Starting at the rear of the KSG, we've got this butt pad. It's got a little bit of give to it, but not really a lot. There's not a lot of give to this thing. You know, if you're going to be firing some heavy stuff out of this, I would recommend getting like a softer butt pad for this thing. It's just not really a lot. We've got a couple of places for some slings, so if you want to mount a sling through one of these loops, you can. That kind of takes us to the action here. Now, I'm going to show you guys a couple of pictures just so I can, you know, get some better lighting in here to show what's going on. But basically, this switch is actuating against kind of like a stopper bar that blocks off one of these tubes. So that allows us to throw shells in there in the tube that it's not blocking. Now, if I need to load the other one, I'll just have to throw it over there. And when we're actually pumping the action, if you're too slow, nothing will happen, so you kind of have to ram it. And that'll throw that shell out. You can also see the carrier here that's going to lift it into place is there. And you can see it's also quite happy loading upside down. No problem at all there. And it'll eject upside down too. So really interesting system on this thing. Pretty complicated, but overall not too bad. And you can access it pretty quickly by disassembling this thing. Just on the top of the KSG, it's got this metal top cheek piece here. This is also your protection against the chamber. The chamber is going to just be underneath here, so that's going to stop, you know, if there was any catastrophic failure. At least this thing's, you know, keeping your face from damage. Moving a little bit forward, we have the standard Kel-Tec grip, which is to say it uses kind of these blocks and it's very polymer, and they use their typical clamshell style. So lots of different screws that kind of hold the two clamshells sides together. You can also see our cross bolt safety there. I'm just going to engage it from the other side, and you can see that it is on fire right now. So if you look at it from the rear, you'll see that red for fire, and we'll see the S for safe on the other side. So that's the cross bolt safety. The trigger is right here, and let's just show you guys what that trigger pull is like. So you can see it's not terrible, but it's not great either. It's a shotgun trigger, and I think it's fine for what it is. A little bit further up, we also have this lever here, and what that does is unlock the slide. So you can press that down. That allows you to pull the action back and load a shell, or just work the action for whatever reason you could have. Now along the top here we have this length of Picatinny rail. This is where you'd mount your, you know, folding iron sights if you want to go that way, or red dot, or whatever you really want to mount on here. A lot of guys I've seen run a red dot, or again iron sights. Now the fore end and pump is quite large. I'll mention this a little bit later, but definitely I would recommend like a front head stop here, and not a vertical foregrip. Definitely don't put one of those on the plastic here, and I'll talk a little bit why later. This is covering over the two magazine tubes that are here. I do have an extension on the barrel here. This is not factory, but I kind of like it just to give me a little bit of extra length and give me the option to more easily access chokes for this shotgun. Now disassembling the KSG is actually really easy. We've got these two pins here. I'm just going to push them in, and they just kind of pop out. Very easy. And then what will happen here is that this lower here will pop out of the main shotgun. So I'm just going to put the main shotgun to the side here, just to go ahead and show you what's going on here. Now this, interestingly, this kind of fire control here, we've got still got our safety on there. You can see that the slide, stop, and release is just this metal bar here. That's all it's really actuating. So it's taking that metal bar out of the way, and that's pretty much all we've got going on here. So pretty simple system. I really like it. You can see these two really big springs down here. Those are actuating, and we go along these two bars here to the hammer. There's our hammer at the back of the action. So as I pull the trigger, I'm just going to very carefully let that forward, and there's our hammer. So kind of a neat system that they've got going for this shotgun, because it's very simple. If I return to our upper, you kind of get a better look at what's going on here. You can see this guy slides back and forth very easily. Now, the other thing I can do right now is actually remove the rear end of the rifle. So there goes our butt pad and the lifter. They just kind of flops around in there. So I'll pop that guy to the side. And now you can see there's our bolt, and if I just move this to the rear, I should be able to pull the bolt out. There we go. And there's our slide and the bar that actuates against the bolt. You can see that's all it's doing. Pretty simple, right? Let me just get that guy out of the way. And you can see there is our bolt. A simple affair. It's pushing up to lock into the locking recesses alongside the barrel. So a very simple system. There's our firing pin at the back there, and the firing pin only protrudes when it's locked in place. When it's not locked in place, and I already hit that, the firing pin will not protrude from the front. So it's safe in that regard, that it'll only fire when the bolt is forward. Now, in terms of usability, the Kel-Tec KSG is actually pretty decent for a bullpup shotgun. Now, I say for a bullpup shotgun because bullpup shotguns come with a couple of little idiosyncrasies with them. A couple of being, because all the action's happening in here, it can be hard to clear jams out of this thing, and these things can jam on you. The other thing is that because this is got these two tubes, you actually have a selector at the bottom that kind of selects which tube you're feeding out of. So nice thing on there is if you want to feed slugs out of one tube and buckshot out of the other, you actually have a selector that'll let you do that and then rack around. Now that's just a dummy round in there, but it's actually decently reliable out on the range. I didn't have any stoppages with this thing, and so long as you really rack it back hard, one of the things that you can have happen is if here, let me just show you if I can reproduce it. Just gonna load one in there, and I'm gonna simulate firing it. Now, if you just slowly rack it back, it won't actually drop a shell in. You have to actually really force that pump back to activate that shell latch and have it load that shell in there. So you do have to rack it quite hard to the rear. I really like the unlock just towards the front of the trigger guard here. If you are a new shooter and if you're a little bit overzealous, you might be pulling down on that guy and slip to the trigger. It's remotely possible, I guess. The safety is fine where it is. It's not particularly like tactical or anything like that, but I guess it's fine. It's easy enough to push in and out with this cross bolt style. I like that it doesn't lock the slide or anything like that, and that you're still able to actuate that, because I prefer to just keep it on safe while I'm running the pump and just not being ready to fire. A couple of idiosyncrasies. One, the sight over bore with these bullpup shotguns is there. So when you're firing it, your sight line is actually quite a bit higher than the bore of the shotgun. So if you're close up, you have to take that into account. Whereas a little bit further away, it's not such a big deal. This guy here has a barrel extension, like I mentioned before, which is just kind of handy. It just gets the a little bit extra room here. Some guys will run a hand stop on the front. I really wouldn't recommend running like a vertical grip. There's actually a case of a guy who was running a vertical grip on one of these things, and as they pumped forward, it ripped the plastic off the bottom here, and their hand got in front of the muzzle, and they actually shot their hand. So you definitely don't want to do that. You may want to run a hand stop on one of these things if you're scared of that kind of thing. If you got really short, stubby arms, it's not such a big deal, but if you got longer arms, you definitely can come off the pump and get your hand in front of the muzzle, and that's not what you want to do with this kind of thing, right? Now, with the addition of chokes, I guess you could use one of these for hunting, but boy, it's not, it's not really what you want to be using. I mean, you're going to have to plug one of the tubes off. The other one, you're going to have to limit it to 2. So this becomes a real silly hunting shotgun. The other thing is that sight over bore, I prefer not to have it. It doesn't make it great for tracking. And it's just not fantastic for ducks or geese, although you could technically use it. This thing will take 3-inch shells, so it is possible. So overall, the Kel-Tec KSG, again, like a lot of Kel-Tec's products, really innovative design. I can't believe that that they made one of these things. It's just so wild. But is it like practical? Kind of. I mean, it's kind of a cool tactical shotgun. There's not a lot out there that would be this compact and hold 15 rounds of or 15 shells, shot shells in them. So it is interesting from that aspect. The materials are typical Kel-Tec. A lot of screws going in between them, and a lot of inexpensive plastic on it. They did opt for metal at the bullpup here, where most of the action is happening, so your face is shielded from whatever's going on in here. Now, if there is any kind of explosion, it could potentially come down here and burn your arm and that kind of thing, but at least your face is safe, right? Now, what would you use it for? Again, I really wouldn't use one for hunting. Some guys try to use these for 3-gun, but the problem is if your 3-gun stage specifies like a 5-round start or a 0-round start, you're hooped. It's so finicky trying to load this thing. The tubes are way up in the guts of this thing, so trying to load it fast on the clock does not work. You can't double or quad load these tubes, so it's a very slow shotgun to reload. Now, that all being said, really cool shotgun. With the red dot on here, if you were in the US, it could be like a really neat home defense shotgun just because it holds so many shells in it, and it is so nice and compact. Up here in Canada, it's a no-go because we can't leave our guns hanging around the house loaded or anything like that. So you couldn't use this kind of thing, or at least it wouldn't be a great idea to use up here in Canada. But definitely because of that rail and because you can easily add a red dot on it, it would be really interesting for a really easy shotgun to use. Anyways, that was a quick look at the Kel-Tec KSG, really interesting shotgun. This would come up against the UTAS 15, which is also a large capacity pump action shotgun with 2 tubes, bullpup. The same kind of idea, just approached in a very different way. This guy is quite a bit more compact than the UTAS 15. And if I had to buy one of the two and they were the same price, I would probably go for the KSG just because of its compactness and to be honest, its reliability. I prefer running this system to the UTAS where you have to flip that little lid open and push them in from the top. Neither one are very easy to reload under time, but I would rather have this guy just to have like a compact bullpup high capacity shotgun. Thanks for watching.
All right, the wind killed my audio here, but I'm testing out these smaller shells. They're actually 1.67 inches long, so they're quite a bit shorter, and you can fit a couple extra rounds inside this Kel-Tec KSG. So I'm just going to load it up here and maybe put it on fast mode. But the long story short is that you can fit 9 comfortably in the tube. You can fit 10 if you really squeeze that last one in. So what I'm going to do here is put 9 in one tube, 1 in the chamber, and then 10 in the tube that I'm going to use.